So today we have a panel of quite diverse background. People who develop location technology, people who use location technology, and for business as well as for consumer purposes. Recently location has gotten a lot more coverage. Lots of it is negative, but that's typically a sign when a technology becomes successful and it becomes part of everyday's life. Then you start figuring out what are the negative sides of it and how to make those negatives into positive. So we'll talk a bit about that, especially location with respect to privacy issues and regulations. But I think more importantly, we are moving into a world which is becoming more and more location aware. And I'll take it a step forward. It's becoming what I call a GeoAware world, geospatial enabling. I think actually spatial enabling is just one aspect of a GeoAware world where you're combining geospatial technologies with location technologies with significant data science, analytics, AI to provide what I call real-time geo information, whether it's for autonomous vehicles, autonomous drone delivery, smart cities. I think you're going to see elements of this in almost every aspect of life we have here. So today in the panel, we'll look at how does location technology play a role into it, what are the usages and application of that, where do we see new developments coming, and where do we see new challenges. Before we get into those subjects, I like each one of the panelists to introduce themselves and their company.
My name is Sunil. I'm the CEO of Ground Truth. Ground Truth was founded in 2009 with about 350 employees, 15 offices, operating in 21 countries. What we do is we build a location platform that the sole purpose is to drive store visits for our customers. When I say a customer, it could be anybody with a brick and mortar store front. So it could be McDonald's, it could be a small auto shop or a pizzeria, and you name it. The reason we went after this market because I think that 90% of consumers' time is spent in these stores, and there is no good way of bringing that kind of consumer intent that comes from your location movement to the marketeers. We've been seeing a lot of success with our technology. Just last year, we are in expansion mode where we are making this technology available in a self-serve fashion. So anybody can come in and create a login and start finding consumers and drive them to their stores or some other stores.
Thanks, Sunil and Kalmar. Jeff Glick, I'm the CEO at Foursquare. And so we aim to be the most trusted location technology platform, to use a similar word. And so you may not know Foursquare if you haven't followed some of the ways we work with 150,000 developers and leading brands around the world. But if you type the Intercontinental into Uber, if you get a geo-filter on Snap, if you tag a tweet from this room on Twitter, if you have a Samsung phone and you get location albums, those are all powered by Foursquare technology and data. So we work with, we are sort of location or contextually aware technology, which understands about 100 million POI in about 200 countries, is kind of this multi-sensor technology we call Pilgrim that really tries to understand a true stop from a consumer point of view, not really an advertising point of view, because we built the technology to create experiences. So we're helping Tinder pair people for dating based on, hey, you should meet this guy. He goes to the same cold brew coffee shop in Brooklyn that you do and goes to the same dog park every morning around the corner. This is someone you should meet, and sort of rather than just someone who happens to be in a 2-mile proximity at this moment. And so trying to build human connections, we help TripAdvisor now as they roll out the global awareness so that you can be, rounding a corner in Rome and get a location-based ping saying, hey, your friend, John, found this incredible homemade pasta place around the corner. You have to stop and go in and get the ricotta pasta or whatever it is. So this is kind of a layer, a social layer. We run AccuWeather's location contextual alerts. And so these are thousands of companies trying to make experiences better, which we'll come back to when we talk about privacy, I think. The key for this industry, we believe, is really powerful technology that makes people's lives better in a visible way and earns their trust. So we also help brands measure store lift, and so we work with about 250 companies on that. We're now measuring TV and whether TV as well as digital ads lead people into stores, and we work with about 50 of the 100 largest advertisers to pair their offerings with the right audiences. So we're about 300 plus people and have offices from Singapore to Chicago to New York to our headquarters, and as well as around the corner here in San Francisco. So I look forward to the panel.
I'm Gil Elbaz, founder and CEO of Factual. Our mission is to provide the highest quality location data to our customers and partners to power a whole set of really powerful use cases. Our customers need this high quality data to power innovation, generally to get the most out of real world context, which is increasingly understood to be this tremendous opportunity. Understanding users, understanding what they're doing, providing more delightful, predictive, insightful, smart mobile experiences and digital experiences. We think we're just at the tip of that iceberg. You understand your user, you give them what you want, your device becomes more helpful and better than a best friend or a spouse. Not knocking either of those are good too. But these devices can, with trust and with opt-in consent, if you share more information about yourself, these apps get more and more intelligent. And we've only seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of the kind of data that can be shared, and then the AI layers on top of that that bring this to life. Some of our use cases we'll share a little bit in common with my friend here Jeff at Foursquare, but we similarly power through our SDK these kinds of experiences. We count many of the top mobile apps as customers and partners, such as Apple, Microsoft, Uber, Snapchat. We power mobile advertising for many of the large brands. And because we're a horizontal data platform, we are able, really focused on the data, we are able to participate in solutions, not always building it ourselves, but we can work with partners to build solutions across financial services, CPG and couponing, mobility and logistics. So I'm very bullish in terms of number of categories, as we've heard panelists talk about. And then the ones that are just on this horizon, I think, are even more exciting. Consumers the new consumer is going to be the mobile entity, the drone, the self-driving car, the autonomous robot that's delivering packages. And then we have these hybrid entities, these humans wearing AR, and you're not really sure exactly what they are. We're still defining. But these people and devices need context and information in order to do their job well and easily. And so very optimistic on the new wedges of opportunity and revenue. The only thing that maybe keeps me up at night is regulation and the fact that the duopoly or probably triopoly with Google, Facebook, Amazon collecting the kind of data that they do, and maybe the recent regulatory environment assisting them, giving them the nice assist so it's even easier for them to get the conversion. I hope that we'll talk more about that during our panel.
My name is Ganesh Pratapraman. I'm co-founder and CEO of NextNav. Unlike everybody here on the panel, we're actually a location generator, or we create the raw location that can be used for a variety of different purposes. So ultimately, we are, I guess I would say we're building the next generation of GPS, essentially by delivering, we're a service provider that delivers high precision, reliable 3D geolocation capabilities across all the places where GPS doesn't work, which could be indoors, it could be urban areas, any of those kinds of environments. And we do this scalably, so we cover entire cities instead of specific buildings. And the way we do it is actually by deploying we call it terrestrial GPS satellites, which are transmitting a very much like a GPS-like signal that works seamlessly with your cell phones and can now give you a much better blue dot on your phone horizontally and vertically. So we can tell you exactly which room and which floor. And the same technology is useful for drones and driverless cars and all those kinds of applications that require reliable 3D geolocation capabilities.
Thank you, Ganesh. So I think let's address the elephant in the room first, the privacy. Recently, there has been lots of news about the privacy. And, location is probably one of the most sensitive part of a consumer's life. And protection of that information is clearly very important. Even in the early days of surf, one of the questions most asked to me was, how will location impact privacy? And my response was pretty standard. I said, when there is a choice between life and privacy, it's easy to say that we'll pick life, because for E911 and all that, location is saving lives. On the other extreme is when people are misusing location, then clearly we need to have privacy protected through regulation. It's the in-between stage where people are benefiting from location, but the trade-off between privacy and location becomes gray area. That's where we are now, because now we are seeing location being part of our everyday life. And recently, some operators have decided to delink from location aggregators. Some regulations are coming, GDPR and others, which will impact the sharing of location information. So if each one of you could talk a bit about how these new developments are impacting your business, and positively or negatively, and how would you address these issues so that industry doesn't suffer as a result of these?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the top of mind discussion across, not just with advertising industry or, analytics and so on, but we have presence in Europe, and GDPR has definitely, made an impact. And the way we think about privacy is, I think whatever is happening for the right reasons. If you're building a business model on, location data, and you haven't done a good job of making sure the owner of the data is aware that how the data is being used, then eventually at some point you have to make arrangements to make sure that there is this consumer trust is kind of built. So we as a company have done tremendous things in protecting that. We get no benefit by identifying someone's home location, for example. That's not our business. So there is no way we're going to put thousands of engineers to kind of go and say, hey, let's go and find out the home location of this user. But that's where the market thinks, hey, we can figure out the home address, but that's not where the engineering resources are going to go. So I think, what we have done, within our company, where we protect consumer privacy, we eliminate home addresses or sensitive locations and so on. What we need to do is we need to go and start pushing this closer to the consumer somehow, so they have a view into that, and through app developers, or in some instances directly to the consumers essentially. So building a platform, not just on the marketeer side, but also building a platform more for the consumers and the app developers. In a way that they can see and they can control, they can tweak their information, and they can get more comfortable that the data that I'm providing is safe and protected and is being used only and only to benefit me as a consumer. I think that's the direction we're going to go.
Good.
Yeah, so Foursquare is a 99% a B2B company, so we work with thousands of other companies. But we started as a consumer company with the check-ins, and we've done nearing 14 billion check-ins, and we still do 1 billion a year. So we've always had this ethos that location tech and contextual computing, as we call it, is for the user. And it's about, are you creating experiences that people want to opt into, where they're in control, where data is a privilege? And we kind of believe in this Hippocratic oath that for data scientists that they should be earning the trust of users and thinking at each stage, is this a use case that we're authorized for and that is in the interest of the consumer. So that's why we work with. When we work with AccuWeather, we're saying like, hey, opt into location because storms are coming to you, and we make it contextual. So you get a more urgent alert if it's about to rain in a baseball stadium than at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at work, because those are different contexts for storm or allergy alerts or pollen alerts or things that we're doing with AccuWeather. With Tinder, it's about getting a better match. And so with TripAdvisor, it's about discovering the world and having your friends as a layer with you as you travel. And I think people get those kinds of opt-in cases where I'd like to see the industry upgrade, and we're certainly working with our partners to raise the bar to the very highest privacy standards, is if you believe that the key elements are informed choice, continued consumer control, value to the consumer, and that we shouldn't forget that there's actual visible value to the user. And then kind of this ongoing obligation to use the data in ways that are authorized and valuable to the user. So if you think about those 4 elements, we'd like to see regulation in the United States. We're in favor of smart regulation, and we'd like everyone to be in the industry to be lifted to the kind of standard that we think we've been trying to set. But I would like to see more clear disclosure, not just that you're opting in for background location as a consumer, the value of that, but that it will be shared with partners to make more relevant offers and ads. And we worked with AccuWeather on this. And we're seeing 80% of consumers, when given the choice, and this is a separate choice from getting weather alerts. Are you okay opting in to share with our partners information that'll make more relevant ads and offers to you? 80% of people are saying yes, because in America we have a great tradition of free TV, free radio, historically free newspapers, and lots of other free things, whether Gmail or free music on Spotify, in return for ads. Like, it's a very Americana kind of thing. And there's like a 1% fringe that believes that the advertising industry as a whole just shouldn't exist. And like Facebook should be illegal unless they purely charge. And that doesn't seem very American. But the funniest thing is that like when you look at some of the people advocating for that, like the ACLU wrote a blog post saying that basically behavioral advertising shouldn't exist as a whole, like blanket. And the funny thing is, I'm on many nonprofit boards, and the funny thing is, I donate to the ACLU, and I know they sell my name and address to every other nonprofit. I don't remember opting into that, because my other nonprofits buy it from the ACLU. So it's kind of funny, some of the perspective here, and I'll hand it over, but in one second. But the online industry should have a higher standard, but it should be held similarly to the offline industry. So we're in this odd thing, and you talked about this, where location tech can change lives, but it's kind of like self-driving cars is my analogy, right? It's going to save millions of lives, but a self-driving car kills one person who's crossing a freeway at night, and everyone freaks out, and rightly so. But if you think about the millions of people a year who die because humans drive cars really badly, no one writes a story about that. And so similarly, like if you have a Walgreens card or a Kroger card, everything you buy is sold in a second to Oracle, and who then resells it to thousands of others. And how is that not okay? I mean, do those people know when they get savings at the grocery store that they're part of a chain? So why is that a different standard than location tech?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point, because as I said, there are some clear cases, life versus privacy, life versus location. It's the intermediate cases, and my concern is whether the governments are going to go overboard and try to regulate when there is a clear benefit to the consumer.
Right.
And industry obviously has to do a better job of articulating those benefits. Otherwise, you have a risk of us losing a lot more benefits just because there was one bad case. Gil?
Yeah, certainly agree with you that we do need to evangelize all these benefits so that the conversation isn't overly controlled by the smaller portion of these privacy advocates that are doing the right thing. I think sometimes they're just spreading it's a certain degree of fear mongering that's beyond. We welcome we welcome generally the notion of clear standards around consent. From day one, we've taken the long-term sustainable business approach of making sure we work with partners that have, if we're going to work with a partner and process data and understand data, we want to make sure this partner has full consent of the user, and as well as the right kind of use cases. What's been a challenge is the lack of clarity. So take Europe, where we have a presence. We have data in 52 countries, and Europe is a good chunk of that. It's taken a while for it to emerge exactly what do they constitute as consent. And it's those lack of standards. And I'm worried about that happening in the US. California is enacting its own privacy regulation starting 2020. What we would love is a federal regulation so that we're dealing with a clear standard that simplifies things. Then we know which partners to work with, and there's no questions. I mean, another issue that I think is important are the counter-prevailing forces of Europe and maybe other parts of the world wanting to curb the power of, let's say, Google and Facebook. But at the same time, these regulations providing a cover to these walled gardens to keep their data, to not work with many of the companies here in this audience at the data level, and to use as an excuse that, well, we're protecting the data. There are ways to protect data working with trusted partners that allow for walls to open. And so I think that's an important discussion, is the right balance there.
Yeah, so if I may add, I mean, so I think I would say regulation, and I'd probably be a little bit of an outlier, is not a bad thing overall. I sort of compare it to kids' soccer games, right? You got to have some set of rules in order to play fair and square. Otherwise, everybody's poking each other in the eye, and people get hurt. And so to me, regulation is a sign of, as Kanwar said, a maturity of, or maturization of the industry, that we're all sort of saying, okay, this is something that we use on a regular basis, and there are certain boundaries. What are the boundaries? Because I'll tell you a good example. Everybody on this panel, everybody sitting around here, one of the reasons we're sitting around here is because of what happened, I would say in 1999, 2000, when the FCC put together rules on geolocation of mobile phones for emergencies. That got GPS into cell phones, and that's created this entire industry of business and data that we're all part of today. So I would say regulations aren't necessarily a four-letter word. The key is finding the balance, because I've talked to regulators. I mean, I think there's a whole set of people who'd say, we don't want to kill the mobile intelligence business at all. We want it to survive. The question is, what's the set of rules that get put in place? And I think I would say that I don't think anybody quite knows yet what the exact optimum balance are. There's a set of rules that have been put in place by GDPR that's sort of drawing a marker in the ground. California certainly has a even more higher bound or a higher threshold that has been described. I'm not sure either one of those are necessarily the full answer. I think there's a level of iteration that needs to happen, and as long as industry and regulators are open to the idea that this is not the end-all, be-all, and there's going to be an iterative process here, then I think we can strike the right balance. Because, you know, is opt-in a good thing? I would say yes, absolutely. I think everything that we do, it's always based on opt-in, and that is a positive in the industry. But is it opt-in on every instance, and before you know it, as California describes it? I don't know. You know, it gets to a point where it's, as Jeff was saying, it gets so intrusive you can't really use it. And so you have to figure out what's the right balance. And I think as an industry, some of it is on us to educate the consumers and to the regulators that there's a fine line between what's usable versus not, because there is this cloak of I could use regulation to essentially squelch or create more competition from a Google or Facebook. and that can have a detrimental effect to the overall industry, and we have to be careful that doesn't happen. And so I think it's a balancing act. We're in the first stage of that balancing act, but there's a lot more to go before we find that right optimum.
But I think overall, as we move towards what I call this new GeoAware world, location-based services, location-based applications, location technology, integrated with more and more real-time geospatial information, combined with massive amount of data which gets generated real-time and running analytics, data science, AI, whatever buzzword you want to use on top of it, will make this world a better world for all of us. Regulation does have a space in it. Regulation has to be balanced with the benefits which all these technologies are bringing to it, and it's our job as an industry to make sure that the what I call 1% radical elements don't negatively impact 99% normal elements of the world. I'd like to thank the panel. Really good, interesting discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice.